Have you ever looked at the Eiffel Tower and wondered how it got there? It looks so perfect in Paris, like it was always part of the city. But the real story is much more surprising. It all started with a big challenge, almost like a bet. Imagine this. Paris was getting ready for a huge party, a World's Fair, in 1889. This fair was extra special because it marked 100 years since the French Revolution. The city wanted to build something spectacular, something no one had ever seen before. They needed a grand entrance, a monument that would shout to the world, "Look at France, look at what we can do!" It was a call for a masterpiece. So the French government announced a competition. They invited the smartest engineers and architects in the country to submit their best ideas. The challenge was simple but enormous. Design and build a tower that was 300 meters tall. That's almost 1,000 feet. Back then, nothing like that existed. The tallest building in the world was the Washington Monument, which was only about half that height. Building a tower so tall, made of iron, was a wild dream. It was a dare to push the limits of engineering and imagination. This wasn't just about building a structure, it was about making a statement for France's future. A man named Gustave Eiffel and his clever team of engineers heard this call. Eiffel was already a famous builder. He had designed strong bridges and the sturdy frame inside the Statue of Liberty. He loved working with iron and knew its strength. His team, including engineers Maurice Koechlin and Émile Nouguier, had already been sketching ideas for a giant iron tower. When they heard about the competition, they knew this was their moment. Their design was bold and looked like a giant lattice of metal reaching for the clouds. They believed they could win this incredible bet and build the tallest structure on Earth. Their proposal was one of over 100 entries submitted for the grand competition. Many designs were strange and fantastical, but Eiffel's was different. It was based on solid engineering principles, the same ones he used for his bridges. He knew how to make a structure that could withstand strong winds and support its own immense weight. His design was practical yet elegant, a perfect blend of art and science. The committee reviewed all the ideas, and in the end, they chose Eiffel's. The bet was on. Gustave Eiffel now had the official challenge, to build his impossible tower in the heart of Paris. It was just the first step. The real challenge was actually building the tower. Eiffel's contract was very specific and very risky. He had to build the entire tower in just over 2 years. Even more, he had to pay for most of it himself. The government gave him some money, but the rest came from his own company. As part of the deal, he would be allowed to keep all the money from ticket sales for the first 20 years. This was the biggest bet of his life. If people didn't come to see his tower, he would lose a fortune. It was a high-stakes gamble on a structure many thought was impossible. As soon as the plans were revealed, many people in Paris were horrified. They did not like the idea of a giant iron skeleton towering over their beautiful city. Paris was known for its classic stone buildings, its charming streets, and its artistic soul. To them, this metal monster was ugly and industrial. A group of 300 famous artists and writers, including the author Guy de Maupassant, signed a petition against it. They called it a useless and monstrous tower and a hateful shadow that would ruin the beauty of Paris. They begged the government to stop the project before it was too late. The critics were loud and passionate. They worried the tower would be an eyesore, a black smokestack dominating the skyline. Some people were also scared. They spread rumors that the heavy tower would sink into the soft ground near the Seine River. Others feared that it would attract lightning or that it might just collapse on a windy day, crushing the neighborhoods below. The newspapers were filled with angry letters and cartoons making fun of Eiffel's metal asparagus. It seemed like Eiffel was not just fighting against time and gravity, he was fighting against the very people of Paris. Despite the protests, Gustave Eiffel was confident. He was an engineer, not an artist, and he trusted his math. He knew his design was safe and strong. He published articles in newspapers explaining the science behind his tower, showing how the open lattice design would allow wind to pass through it safely. He argued that his tower was a symbol of modern engineering and progress. He had to convince everyone that his creation would not be a monster, but a marvel. The clock was ticking, the critics were yelling, and the whole world was watching to see if he would succeed or fail. The construction of the Eiffel Tower began on January 28, 1887. It was an incredible sight. The first step was to build the foundations. Workers had to dig deep into the earth to create a solid base for each of the 4 massive legs. Because the 2 legs closest to the river were on softer ground, Eiffel used special watertight chambers and compressed air, a technique from his bridge building days, to allow workers to dig safely below the water level. Every piece of the tower was carefully planned. The project was like assembling a giant construction set with over 18,000 individual iron parts, all held together by 2.5 million rivets. What was truly amazing was that every single one of those 18,038 pieces of wrought iron was designed and made in Eiffel's factory just outside of Paris. Each piece was measured perfectly, with holes for the rivets drilled to within 1/10 of a millimeter of accuracy. The parts were then brought to the construction site by horse-drawn carts. A team of about 300 workers was tasked with putting it all together. They were like acrobats, climbing higher and higher on the metal framework. They used small cranes powered by steam to lift the heavy iron girders into place, a slow and careful process. The safety record for the project was remarkable for its time. Gustave Eiffel was very concerned about his workers. He insisted on using safety measures like guardrails and movable scaffolding. Considering the dizzying heights and the lack of modern safety equipment like hard hats or safety harnesses, it is a miracle that only one worker died during the entire construction process. The tower grew taller and taller, piece by piece, day by day. Parisians who had once complained now gathered to watch in awe as the structure took shape, reaching higher into the sky than anything they had ever imagined. In just 2 years, 2 months, and 5 days, the impossible was achieved. The tower was finished on March 31st, 1889, right on schedule for the World's Fair. To celebrate, Gustave Eiffel led a group of officials up the stairs to the very top. There, he raised a huge French flag. The bet was won. He had built the tallest man-made structure in the world, a testament to French ingenuity and engineering prowess. The tower that so many had doubted now stood complete, a silent and spectacular giant ready to welcome the world. When Exposition Universelle opened, the Eiffel Tower was the star of the show. People from all over the globe flocked to see it. The same Parisians who had protested it now lined up to ride the new elevators to the top. The view was breathtaking. For the first time, people could see their entire city laid out below them like a map. Nearly 2 million visitors climbed the tower during the fair alone, making Eiffel's financial bet a huge success. The tower that was once hated was now the most popular attraction in Paris. Even the critics had to admit it was an impressive feat. However, the tower was never meant to be permanent. The original plan was to tear it down after 20 years. As the deadline approached, Gustave Eiffel had to find a new purpose for his creation to save it from destruction. He was a clever promoter and began to market the tower as an essential tool for science. He installed a meteorology lab at the top to study the weather. More importantly, the tower's great height made it perfect for new technology. It became a giant radio antenna sending wireless telegraph signals. During World War I, its radio transmitter intercepted enemy messages, helping France in the war effort. The tower's usefulness for radio and later television broadcasting saved it. The city of Paris realized that this useless structure was actually incredibly valuable. Over the years, people's feelings changed completely. The tower was no longer seen as an ugly intruder, but as a beloved part of the Parisian landscape. Artists who had once protested it began to paint it. Poets wrote about its graceful shape. It became a symbol of romance, adventure, and the spirit of Paris. The temporary marvel had slowly but surely worked its way into the heart of France. Today, it's impossible to imagine Paris without the Eiffel Tower. It is more than just a tourist attraction. It is the symbol of France itself. It represents the daring spirit of innovation, the beauty of engineering, and the idea that even the craziest bets can sometimes lead to something wonderful and lasting. Every night, when its lights sparkle across the city, it reminds us of its amazing story. It's a story of a great challenge, a city's doubt, and the incredible vision of one man who bet on an iron giant and gave the world an icon.